My name is Maya Collins, 29 years old, and the day my parents read my wedding invitation, my father looked me dead in the eye and said, "We are not watching you ruin your life over a man with that kind of history." My mother sneered beside him, her voice dripping with contempt. His mother was a drunk who dumped him at a bus station when he was 8 years old. What kind of worthless man does that make him? You are better than this garbage, Maya. You deserve so much more than damaged goods. They sent the invitation back with one word written across the front, in my mother's perfect handwriting. No. Just that. One single word that carried the weight of everything they thought of me, of my choices, of the man I loved. They didn't stop there. They called my brother Brandon and my sister Claire and told them to boycott the wedding too, painting it as an act of family loyalty, when really it was nothing more than cruelty dressed up in parental concern.
So, on April 12th, 2026, I walked down the aisle of St. Michael's Cathedral in Seattle, Washington, completely and utterly alone. No father to take my arm, no mother crying happy tears in the front row, no siblings beaming from the pews. Just 200 guests staring at a bride with no family behind her, a woman walking toward the most important moment of her life, with nothing but her own courage keeping her feet moving forward. I was halfway down that aisle, counting my steps to keep from breaking apart, when the heavy oak door at the back of the cathedral let out a slow, painful creak. Every single head in that room turned. A woman stood in the doorway wearing a pale blue dress, her hands trembling at her sides, tears already cutting rivers down her face. The afternoon light flooded in behind her, framing her in gold. I didn't recognize her.
But Ethan, the man my parents had called damaged goods, the man they had written off as worthless, looked up from the altar and went completely white. Then his knees buckled, and he collapsed to the marble floor, and the sound echoed through that entire church like a thunderclap. My parents thought they knew exactly who they were rejecting when they sent back that invitation. They were so very wrong. And what walked through that door didn't just change my wedding, it changed everything. Before I take you back to where this all began, if this story is already sitting heavy in your chest, please take a second and hit the like button. Subscribe to Story Sentence, and drop a comment telling me if you've ever been rejected by your own family on the most important day of your life. Tell me where you're watching from right now. Your story matters here. Now, let me take you back to February, when the RSVP cards started arriving, and my family made their choice with devastating clarity. The invitations went out in late January. Most came back quickly, with joyful check marks and little personal notes tucked inside. Jessica, my best friend and maid of honor, sent hers back with a hand-drawn sketch of champagne flutes and the words, "I cannot wait," written in enormous block letters across the entire card. Ethan's crew from the Ironworkers Union, the men he had worked side by side with for over a decade doing electrical installation across Seattle, sent their cards back within 4 days of receiving them. Every single one said yes. Then my family's cards arrived, February 18th. I remember the date precisely because I had taken the afternoon off specifically to go through RSVPs with Ethan. We were sitting at the second-hand kitchen table he had bought when he first got his own place, a scratched wooden thing he'd refinished himself on a weekend in November. I had a color-coded spreadsheet open on my laptop. Green for yes, red for no, yellow for still waiting.
I opened the first envelope and recognized my mother's handwriting immediately. Patricia Collins. Gerald Collins. I already knew what I would find inside, but some stubborn, hopeful corner of my heart whispered that maybe I was wrong. I wasn't. Under declines with regret, my mother had placed a single, precise checkmark. No note, no explanation, no apology, just a signature. The second envelope was my brother, Brandon, and his wife. No. The third was my sister, Claire. No. 3 red cells in a sea of green. My entire immediate family, absent. Ethan saw my face change. He reached across the table before I could say a word. I turned the laptop around so he could see the spreadsheet. He looked at it for a long moment, then reached across and took both my hands in his, and didn't say anything at all. He just held on while I stared at those 3 red squares and tried to breathe. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom. I should have let it go to voicemail. I didn't. Hello, Maya.
My mother's voice was tight with the particular tension she used when she was trying to sound reasonable while doing something completely unreasonable. We got your invitation. I know, I said, keeping my voice flat. We're not coming. We can't support this. Support what? My marriage? There was a click, and then my father's voice joined the line. That hollow quality meant speakerphone. They had planned this call together, a unified front. Don't pretend you don't know what we're talking about, my mother said. That man is trash, Maya. His mother was a drunk who dumped him at a bus station like a piece of garbage. What kind of worthless man comes from that? The words hit me somewhere physical, somewhere deep in my chest. Trash, garbage, worthless. These were words for things you threw away, not for people. Never for people I loved. Ethan is a good man, I said, my voice beginning to shake. He works hard, he's kind, My father cut me off. He is an electrician with a dead-end job and a family history of abandonment and addiction. Do you honestly think that doesn't stick? You think a person just walks away from that kind of damage? He didn't choose any of that, I said. His mother left him. He was 8 years old. We didn't sacrifice everything we have to watch you throw your future away, my mother continued, her voice going cold now. You are better than this, Maya. You deserve more than someone else's baggage. You're calling the man I love baggage? I had stood up, had to move, was pacing the kitchen while Ethan watched me with quiet concern from the table. If the shoe fits, my father said flatly, we're sending the invitation back, and we're going to tell Brandon and Claire not to attend either. We won't be part of this mistake. Something inside me cracked open. What if I called the whole thing off? Would that make you happy? Silence. Long enough to make me think they might hesitate. Long enough for a fragile, foolish hope to flicker. Then my mother said, yes, it would. I hung up. Ethan was already on his feet, arms open, and I walked straight into them and stood there breathing for a long time, trying to hold myself together. The call had lasted 11 minutes. 11 minutes for my parents to dismantle 29 years of a relationship. What did they say? Ethan asked quietly. I pulled back and looked at him, at this man who had survived being abandoned at a bus station at 8 years old, who had put himself through trade school, who had built something real from nothing at all, who showed up to every job on time, who tipped generously and remembered my coffee order without being asked, and had called his Grandma Ruth every Sunday without fail until the day she died. They called you trash, I said. They said you're damaged goods, that your mother leaving makes you worthless, that you're a dead end. His face did something complicated. A flash of pain, then the careful mask he wore when something cut too deep to show. What did you say? I told them I love you. Then that's everything that matters. I wanted that to be true. God, I needed that to be true. But they were my parents, and I had spent 29 years hoping they would see me clearly, and now I had to accept that they couldn't even do that on my wedding day. Do you want to call off the wedding? Ethan asked, and the question cost him something. I could see it. Absolutely not, I said. The words came fast and fierce. I'm marrying you, with or without them. He kissed my forehead, slow and certain. Then we're getting married. Now I need to tell you who Ethan Brooks really is, because my parents never bothered to find out, and it matters. Ethan Brooks, 33 years old, born March 2nd, 1993. His mother, Linda, was 19 when she had him. Fresh out of high school, working the overnight shift at a gas station, already drinking far more than she should have been. Ethan's early memories come in fragments and flashes, moving constantly, 5 different apartments across Tacoma before he turned 8. His mother's boyfriends cycling through. Men whose names blurred together, but whose voices he still remembers. Loud voices, angry voices. Occasionally gentle ones that never lasted. The smell of stale cigarettes and cheap vodka in the morning air. Waking up to find Linda passed out on the bathroom floor and making himself a bowl of cereal because he was 6 years old and hungry, and she wouldn't wake up no matter how many times he said her name. He told me all of this on our second real date. We were at a late-night diner called Blue Lamp on East Lake Avenue.
red vinyl booths, and coffee that tasted like it had been sitting since Tuesday. It was nearly 2 in the morning.
We had gone to a movie and then just kept walking and talking, and neither of us wanted the night to end. My mom tried, Ethan said, his hands wrapped around his mug. I want to be fair about that. She had good stretches. She'd get clean for a few weeks and be completely different. She'd make pancakes on Saturday mornings, blueberry, from scratch. She'd call me her little star, and we'd watch cartoons until noon. He smiled at the memory, but the edges of it were sad. Then something would shift, and she'd disappear for days at a time, and I'd stay with my Grandma Ruth until she came back, with promises that everything was going to be different now. He set his coffee down. It cycled like that for years, until I was 8. He told me about September 4th, 2001. His mother took him to the Tacoma bus station on a Tuesday morning. She bought him a large bag of M&Ms at the vending machine near the entrance. He remembers that detail perfectly. She sat him down on a plastic orange chair near Gate 4 at 11 in the morning and told him to wait right there. She would be back in just a minute. He ate his M&Ms one filler at a time and watched people move around him, buses pulling in and out, a crackling PA system announcing departures. After 37 minutes, he began to worry. He found a station attendant, a heavy-set man named Barry with a kind face and tired eyes, and asked if someone could check on his mother in the restroom. Barry found a note folded inside Ethan's jacket pocket. It was written on the back of a gas station receipt. The handwriting was shaky. I cannot be what you need. Grandma Ruth will take care of you. I love you more than you will ever understand. I'm sorry. That was it. No goodbye, no explanation beyond those few lines. Just a receipt and an empty promise she'd be right back. Grandma Ruth arrived 2.5 hours later. She was 62 years old. She worked days as a home health aide and weekends doing alterations at a dry cleaner. She had been thinking about slowing down. Instead, she became a full-time mother to a traumatized 8-year-old boy. She never said a single word against Linda, not one. She simply looked at Ethan and said, "You're with me now, for keeps." And she meant it. She raised him in a small 2-bedroom house in Renton, Washington. Clean, stable, full of books and the smell of whatever she was cooking. She made sure he did his homework, made sure he understood that nothing that had happened was his fault, made sure he knew he was loved beyond measure. Ethan graduated high school with honors. Trade school followed because college tuition was simply out of reach, but he was gifted with his hands and wiring came naturally. He finished his 2-year electrical program and went to work under Frank Carter, a master electrician who ran a small but respected outfit in the Seattle area. Frank taught him to read blueprints, how to work efficiently, how to take pride in a job done right. 12 years later, Ethan earns a steady salary doing electrical contracting work across King County. He owns his tools, a full kit he has built piece by piece over the years. His truck is a 2008 Chevy Silverado, paid off 2 years ago. He has money in savings, not a fortune, but real, intentional savings he had set aside specifically for our wedding over the course of 18 months. Every Friday, a portion of his paycheck went into a separate account he had labeled Future. He volunteers every other Saturday at a youth center in Rainier Valley, teaching teenagers basic electrical safety and giving them something useful to hold on to. He tips generously. He remembers important dates without needing reminders. He called Grandma Ruth every single Sunday without exception until she passed away in November 2020. Ruth's death broke something inside Ethan. She had been his constant. His proof that people could choose to stay. Congestive heart failure, 80 years old. She went to sleep and didn't wake up. Peaceful and quiet and without warning. We met in the summer of 2023. Same gym, both regulars, both creatures of habit. I had noticed him before he ever spoke to me. Quiet, always polite to the staff, focused in a way that felt grounded rather than isolated. One afternoon, my locker jammed, and he happened to be nearby with a piece of wire in his gym bag that fixed it in 30 seconds. "Electrician," he said, grinning. We got coffee after our workouts and kept talking for 3 hours. Coffee became a standing weekly thing. Then weekly became every few days. Then it became everything. 6 months in, I knew he was the person I would spend my life with. A year after that, I told my parents about him. That's when the world I had known cracked down the middle.
If you are listening to this right now and thinking about skipping ahead, please don't.
Because what happened next is the part that will stay with you. And before I get there, if this story is hitting something real for you, hit that like button right now and subscribe to Story Sentence so you don't miss what comes next. February through April was a particular kind of quiet grief. Planning a wedding while knowing your family has refused to attend is something nobody prepares you for. You go through all the same motions as every other bride, booking the venue, choosing the flowers, finalizing the menu, trying on the dress, and every single task has a hollow echo underneath it. We booked St. Michael's Cathedral, a beautiful old stone church in Capitol Hill, with stained glass that turned afternoon light into something sacred. We reserved Ironworkers Hall for the reception, 3 blocks from the church. Ethan's union offered it to us at a steep discount, $800 instead of the standard $2,800. We ordered a 3-tier cake, lemon with lavender buttercream, from a small bakery in Fremont called Crumb and Thread. We spent $460 on it, and it was worth every cent. I chose a dress from a small bridal boutique on Pine Street, ivory tulle with hand-sewn pearl details along the neckline, $1,800, and I cried in the dressing room, not because the dress was beautiful, though it was, but because my mother wasn't there to see it. The guest list told its own painful story. We had sent 80 invitations in total. By early March, we had confirmed 212 attendees, but the breakdown was brutal. My side of the church, 27 people. Jessica and 4 bridesmaids, friends from college who had known me long enough to ignore my parents' edict. My cousin Haley, who was 18 and had defied her parents to come, and had texted me, "I don't care what Aunt Patricia says, I'll be there." My Aunt Diane, my mother's younger sister, who had called me sobbing to say that what my parents were doing was wrong and that she would be there, period. A handful of colleagues from Eastside Medical Center, where I work as an occupational therapist. 27 people. Ethan's side, 185. His union brothers and their families. Frank Carter, his mentor, who had driven 2 hours to RSVP in person just to make a point. Derek Mason, his best man, and a circle of friends from trade school in the neighborhood. Kids from the youth center and their parents, most of whom had never met me but showed up because Ethan had asked. 185 people. The visual was going to be devastating. Our wedding coordinator, a meticulous woman named Priya Kapoor, who had planned over 300 weddings across the Pacific Northwest, gently suggested removing the reserved family signs from my side of the church. "Maya," she said, laying out the seating diagram across her office table, "it might make things feel more balanced if we just don't draw attention to the empty seats." "Leave them," I said. "Are you sure?" "Leave the signs, leave the seats. I want my parents to have the option, even if they won't take it." Priya looked at me with the careful compassion of someone who has seen too much heartbreak in too many wedding venues. She left the signs. March 22nd, final dress fitting. The seamstress, a small Vietnamese woman named Lon with precise hands and zero tolerance for slouching, had to take in the dress 2 inches at the waist. "You losing weight," she said, not as a question. "You need to eat, sweetheart. Bride's supposed to glow, not disappear." I had dropped 9 pounds in 7 weeks. Stress had a way of hollowing you out from the inside. The wedding was 21 days away, and I was already fading. Jessica was there for the fitting, and she waited until Lan stepped out, and then she looked at me in that dress, ivory and perfect, and somehow still not enough to fill the room, and she said very quietly, "Are you actually okay?" "I'm marrying the love of my life in 3 weeks." That's not what I asked. I know. She was right. I wasn't okay, but I was going to be. That night, Ethan came over and set a small velvet box on the kitchen counter without saying anything. "It's not another ring," he said when I looked at him. "I promise." Inside was a strand of pearls, simple and clearly old, the kind of jewelry that carries history in the weight of it. "They were Grandma Ruth's," he said. "She wore them to every important thing. My graduation, the one time she came to watch me at a job site just because she wanted to see what I did all day." He paused, swallowed. "She would have loved you, Maya. She would have been in that front row in her Sunday best, telling you that you looked like a movie star." I put the pearls on. They settled cool and smooth against my collarbone and fit as though they had been waiting. "Thank you," I managed. "You're going to walk down that aisle," Ethan said, and you're going to be the most breathtaking thing anyone in that church has ever seen, with or without your family there. April 11th, the night before the wedding. Tradition said we should sleep separately. I stayed at Jessica's apartment. Ethan stayed home. I lay awake staring at the ceiling at 1:30 in the morning and finally called him. He answered on the second ring, voice rough, which told me he hadn't been sleeping either. "What if I start walking and I just fall apart?" I said. "I'll meet you in the middle," he said. "I mean it. If you cry, I'll walk up and meet you halfway." "They're really not coming." "I know, baby. I don't want to hate them." "You don't have to. You just have to love me more than you hate what they did." I thought about that for a long time in the dark. "I do," I finally said. "Then that's enough. Close your eyes. Tomorrow I get to marry you. That's the only thing that matters." We stayed on the phone until I fell asleep, somewhere around 3 in the morning. His breathing was the last thing I heard. Now, here is the part of the story that nobody saw coming, because while I was trying to hold my wedding together without my family, someone else was making a quiet, desperate, and life-changing decision 53 miles away. Linda Brooks was 52 years old. She lived in Olympia, Washington, in a small house she shared with her husband, Paul, a soft-spoken contractor who had learned patience the way some people learn a second language, slowly, through years of necessity and love. Linda had been sober for 23 years, 5 months, and 17 days, as of April 12, 2026. 23 years of Alcoholics Anonymous. More than 6,000 meetings. 23 years of carrying the same bronze sobriety chip in the left pocket of every jacket she owned. 23 years of sponsors, of making amends, of learning to live inside her own skin without running from it. She worked as an addiction counselor at Cascade Recovery Services in Olympia. She was good at her job, in the particular way that people who have been through the fire are good at helping others survive it. They had no children, she and Paul. Linda had been too afraid, too certain that she would repeat the same mistakes, pass on the same damage, destroy another child the way she had destroyed her own. When Grandma Ruth passed away in November 2020, Linda saw the obituary posted in a small online community forum. She had been searching Ruth's name periodically for years, the way you return to a wound to check if it has healed. When she saw that Ruth was gone, she understood that the restraining order Ruth had filed 21 years earlier was now moot. She started searching for Ethan 2 days later. It took her a week and a half to find him. Ethan Brooks, electrical contractor, Seattle area, LinkedIn profile with a professional photo, a Facebook account he barely used but kept active, an Instagram she had to request to follow, which she did under a fake account named Julie Harrison, with a stock photo and a vague bio. He didn't accept the request, but his profile was public enough that she could see the broad strokes. She watched him from a distance across 2 platforms for years. Watched him work. Watched him volunteer. Watched him at the gym. Watched the slow emergence of someone named Maya in his photos, a woman with warm eyes and a laugh that translated even through a screen. She saved every photo she could see into a private folder on her laptop. She labeled it simply with a lowercase e. On February 2nd, 2025, Ethan posted a photo, his hand and Maya's, a diamond ring catching late afternoon light, and a caption that said, "She said yes, I'm the luckiest person alive." Linda stared at that photo for an hour. Her son was getting married, and she would not be there. She had accepted this as the price of what she had done. You leave, you lose the right to witness. That is the deal you make. But she kept watching. She watched the engagement posts and the venue announcement and the first look at the wedding colors and the photo of Ethan in his suit at the tailor, looking nervous and happy and like someone she had failed and someone who had survived. Then, in early March, she noticed something. The comments on a photo one of Ethan's union brothers had posted about the upcoming wedding included a thread she was not meant to see. Someone wrote, "Heard the bride's whole family is skipping. That's cold." Someone else replied, "She's walking alone." For family boycotted because they think Ethan isn't good enough. Can you believe that? Linda read that comment 3 times. Then she sat back in her chair and felt something shift in her chest, like a tectonic plate. The bride was walking alone. Maya was going to do exactly what Ethan had done at that bus station in 2001, walk into an enormous, echoing space with no one beside her. And here is what nobody knew until later. The night after Lyndon at that comment thread, she drove 45 minutes to a florist in Lacey and ordered a single arrangement, white roses and baby's breath, tied with an ivory ribbon, with a small card that said only, "You are braver than you know. He is lucky to have you." She had it delivered anonymously to Priya Kapoor's coordination office, with instructions to place it in the bridal suite on the morning of the wedding. She didn't sign it. She didn't expect anything from it.
She just needed to do one small thing to acknowledge the woman walking into something enormous. Then she called her therapist, Dr. Karen Wells, and said, "I need to talk about the wedding." 12 sessions over 6 weeks, 12 hours of preparation, of sitting with the possibility that she would be turned away at the door, that Ethan would ask her to leave, that her presence might do more harm than her absence ever had. Dr. Wells did not tell her to go. She also did not tell her to stay. She said, "You need to be honest about what you need from this, Linda. Is this for him or for you?" Linda thought about it for a long time. "It's for him," she finally said, "because I have already taken every important moment he ever had, and I can't take this one too." She bought her ticket and booked a room at the Harbor View Hotel in downtown Seattle. She bought the blue dress. She rehearsed in her hotel room mirror the night before. She did not eat breakfast on the morning of the wedding.
She sat in her rental car in the Cathedral parking lot for 22 minutes before she could make herself go inside. April 12th, 2026. My wedding day. I woke up at Jessica's apartment at 6:45 in the morning, after 3 hours of sleep. My stomach in absolute knots, my hands already trembling. The bridal suite at the Marquette Hotel in Capitol Hill was booked for 9, hair and makeup at 10, photographer at noon, leave for the church at 1:30. By 9:20, the suite was full of women and movement and soft music. Jessica, 4 bridesmaids, Amber, Nicole, Priya, my bridesmaid, not the coordinator, and Chloe. My cousin Haley sitting cross-legged on the floor, photographing everything. 6 women, champagne, pastries from the French bakery across the street. The organized, beautiful chaos of getting ready for the most important day of your life. What was missing was my mother. Every wedding I had ever attended, the mother of the bride was there, helping with the dress, fixing the veil, crying and laughing at the same time, fussing over every detail and pretending she wasn't fussing. My mother was 54 miles south in Kirkland, probably at her kitchen table with her coffee and her newspaper, probably not thinking about me at all, or thinking about me and choosing to stay home anyway, which was somehow worse. The makeup artist, a cheerful young woman named Bree, with fast hands and good instincts, worked her way through all of us, talking constantly. "So where's Mom?" she asked while blending my foundation. "Moms are usually glued to the bride on days like this." The room went quiet, the way a room goes quiet when everyone knows something painful and nobody wants to say it. Jessica jumped in. She couldn't make it. Scheduling conflict. "Oh, that's rough," Bree said. "Is she watching on a live stream at least?" "Something like that," I said. Bree kept talking about other brides she had worked with. About mothers who cried from the moment they arrived to the moment they left. About one mother who had actually fainted during the first look photos. Every word was a small, unintentional needle. 11:30. Time for the dress. Normally, the mother of the bride helps with this. My dress had 34 fabric-covered buttons down the back that required a button hook and a steady hand. Jessica did them all. 7 minutes of careful, patient fastening, while I stood very still and stared at myself in the full-length mirror. I looked like a bride. I looked like a woman about to do the bravest thing she had ever done. I also looked like a woman whose mother wasn't there. Grandma Ruth's pearls caught the light beautifully. "You're stunning," Haley said from behind me, voice quiet and sincere. "Genuinely, Maya, you look unreal." "Thank you, sweetheart." "I'm sorry about Aunt Patricia," she said, barely above a whisper. "She's being so stupid." I laughed, genuine, surprised laughter. "Yeah," I said, "she really is." 1:50. My phone buzzed. Text from my sister Claire. "I'm so sorry I'm not there. Brandon and I both wanted to come. Mom and Dad said it would be disloyal, and I didn't know how to fight them on it. I hope you can forgive me someday. I hope you're happy. I saw Jessica's Instagram story. You look like a bride from a fairy tale. I wish I was there. I wish things were different. I read it out loud to the room. A long silence followed. Then Amber said quietly, "She chose them over you." "She did," I said, "and I chose Ethan. We all made choices today." "Do you want to respond?" Jessica asked. "Not today," I said. "Today is not for that." 1:15. The photographer arrived. His name was James Park, 30 years of wedding photography, gentle eyes, the kind of professional who could read a room in 10 seconds and adjust accordingly. He understood immediately. He took everything he could. Bride alone, bride with bridesmaids, bride with bouquet. Bouquet details. Dress trains spread across the floor, the pearls at the throat. What he didn't photograph. Bride with mother, bride with father, family formals. There would be gaps in the album, empty pages where something important should have been. 1:28. The car arrived, a silver sedan we had hired through a local service. We pulled into the cathedral at 1:41. Guests were filing in, dressed beautifully, excited for a celebration. Not one of them my parents. I went in through the side entrance directly to the small bridal room off the vestibule. Jessica fixed my veil, straightened the train, checked my lipstick, and told me I was ready, even though we both knew ready was a complicated word today. Here is what I did not know was happening inside that church at that moment. In the bridal suite, tucked into the corner of the dressing table, was a small floral arrangement, white roses and baby's breath, an ivory ribbon, a card. "You are braver than you know."
He is lucky to have you. No signature. I picked it up and looked at it for a long moment. Jessica shrugged. Priya must have arranged it. I set it down and didn't think about it again. Not until later. At the altar, Ethan was trying to hold himself together and mostly failing. He stood in his charcoal suit, the one he had spent 14 months saving for, shoulders straight, jaw set, doing everything in his power to project calm. Derek Mason stood beside him, best man, steady presence. 3 groomsmen flanked them, Tyler, Ben, and Marcus, all in matching ties. Father O'Brien, a warm and practical Irish-American priest in his mid-60s, who had been at St. Michael's for 20 years, gave Ethan a quiet, encouraging nod. Ethan's hands were shaking. He had them clasped in front of him to hide it. "You holding up?" Derek murmured. "She's about to walk down that aisle by herself because of me. Because of her family, not you. There's a difference, brother."
Ethan looked at the front row. 3 seats, bride side, reserved, family, signs sitting there in their cruel optimism. He looked away. Then the organist began. Ethan could not see the back of the church from where he stood. A pillar blocked his line of sight to the doors. But he heard the sound that moved through the room when those doors opened. 200 people collectively holding their breath. Then he saw her. Maya, ivory and pearl, veil trailing behind her, bouquet of white roses trembling slightly in her grip, and no one beside her. He was crying before she took her 3rd step. She was doing this. She was actually walking toward him, with no one to hold her arm, no one to hand her off, no family in the front row to blur through happy tears. Just her, and her own steady, extraordinary courage, and the pearls his grandmother had worn to every important day of her life. 88 feet of aisle, 42 steps. She counted every one of them. She told me this later.
She counted so she wouldn't look at the empty seats. 1, 2, 3. Don't look left. 4, 5. He is worth this. 6, 7, 8. You knew this would be hard. 9, 10. Just walk. The guests watched in a reverent, weighted silence. Connor's wife Sarah was crying before Maya reached the halfway point. Frank Carter had his hand pressed flat over his heart. Several of Ethan's union brothers were visibly struggling to hold it together. These large, capable men with calloused hands and steel toe boots, blinking hard at the ceiling. Step 21. Halfway.
A single tear slipped down Maya's cheek before she could stop it. And then, a sound. The heavy oak door at the very back of the church swung open, slow and reluctant, hinges groaning in the silence. Every single person in that building turned at once. The afternoon light poured in and silhouetted the figure standing in the doorway. A woman in a pale blue dress, late 40s, maybe early 50s, hands shaking at her sides.
Tears already on her face, she stood very still, blinking as her eyes adjusted from the bright outside to the warm, dim interior of the church. Maya, stopped in the middle of the aisle, did not recognize her. She turned and looked at Ethan. Ethan had gone the color of chalk. Every drop of blood seemed to drain from his face in a single second. His eyes were locked on the woman in the doorway, with an expression of absolute disbelief, the face of someone seeing something they had decided long ago they would never see. His knees gave out. Not a stumble, not a near miss, a complete structural collapse. He went down hard on the marble floor, and the sound of his knees hitting the stone rang through the cathedral like a gunshot. Derek lunged, missed. Ethan was down, palms flat on the marble, staring at the woman in the doorway, unable to stand or speak. 8 full seconds of silence, the kind of silence that has weight.
Then Ethan's voice came through the microphone at the altar, cracked and unrecognizable and raw. "Mom!" The word didn't just travel through the church. It landed on every person in every pew like something physical. "Mom!" 200 people heard it. 14 of them were already filming. The woman in the doorway took one step forward into the church, stopped. Her voice carried in the silence, shaking but deliberate. "Ethan, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just needed to see you. I needed to be here." Ethan was still on the floor, still couldn't seem to make his legs work. "You left me," he said, and his voice cracked on every syllable. "You left me at a bus station." Father O'Brien stepped forward carefully, understanding that he was witnessing something far larger than a late arrival. He crouched slightly toward Ethan. "Son, do you know this woman?" Ethan nodded, still looking at the door. "Is she family?" "She's my mother."
He said it the way you say something that has been locked away for decades, like opening a door you had boarded shut. She abandoned me when I was 8 years old. The church became a vacuum. No movement, no sound, no breath. And Maya made a decision. She turned around, walked backward down the aisle, away from the altar, toward the woman in the blue dress. She reached her, looked at her directly, this stranger who had just shattered her wedding ceremony with 23 years of accumulated grief. "Are you here to hurt him?" Maya's voice was steady, protective, absolute. Linda looked at her, really looked at her, this bride who had walked alone down this aisle because her own family wouldn't come. "No," Linda said. "I'm here to witness what I should have witnessed all along." Maya held her gaze for a long moment, measuring something. Then she turned back to Ethan, still on the floor at the altar. Derek and 2 groomsmen now crouched around him, trying to help him up.
Maya walked back, all the way back up those 42 steps she had just counted. She knelt beside her husband-to-be on the marble floor of St. Michael's Cathedral, in her ivory dress and her grandmother's pearls, and she took his face in both hands. "We can stop," she said quietly. "We can pause everything. Take whatever time you need. Whatever you need, Ethan. Right now." He shook his head, jaw tight, eyes wet. "No, no, we are getting married. I am not letting her take this from me, too." He stood. It took a moment. His legs were unsteady. Derek put a hand on his arm and kept it there. Ethan stood, and then he turned to the woman still standing at the back of the church. Maya turned with him. Her voice was calm, but there was steel underneath it. "Find a seat," she said, loud enough to carry. "Back row. Sit down. Don't move. We will talk after." Linda nodded, walked to the last pew on the left side, sat down.
Pressed both hands flat on her knees, like she was trying to hold herself together through pressure alone. Father O'Brien looked at the couple before him. at this bride who had just knelt on marble in her wedding dress to hold her groom together, at this groom who had just chosen to stand back up. He had been a priest for 31 years. He had never seen anything like this. "Shall we continue?" he asked. Ethan looked at Maya. Maya looked at Ethan. "Yes," she said. "We're getting married. Right now." And story sentence listeners, I need you to know that if you are watching this and feeling something shift inside your chest, you are not alone. Drop a comment. Tell me your story. Hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss what comes next, because what happened during that ceremony and everything that came after is going to stay with you. The ceremony resumed, but the air inside the church had changed.
It was charged now, electric, full of something that hadn't been there before. The guests settled slowly back into their seats, several still wiping their faces, all of them acutely aware of the woman sitting alone in the back row. Linda sat very still, her hands in her lap, a tissue pressed to her lips, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Father O'Brien opened his book, began the traditional opening words. Ethan was present, but barely. Every few seconds his eyes drifted to the back of the church. Connor saw it. Maya saw it. She kept her hands in his and kept her eyes on his face, and every time his gaze slipped, she pulled it back, simply by being there. "Stay here with me," she murmured. "Right here. Just us." When Father O'Brien reached the vows, Ethan's voice was rough and halting. He stumbled on the word honor. He nearly lost it completely on the word family, because the weight of that word had just multiplied by 1,000 in the last 20 minutes. He stopped.
Pressed his lips together. Tried again. The church waited. Nobody moved. "Take your time, son," Father O'Brien said, quiet and unhurried. Ethan nodded, found his footing, finished. When Maya spoke her vows, she deviated from the written text. It was unplanned. She simply said what was true. "Ethan, I don't care who shows up, and I don't care who stays home. I choose you, every single day, whatever comes." She said it loudly enough for the back row to hear. Linda's shoulders shook harder. Then something unexpected happened, something nobody had planned or arranged or anticipated. 3 teenagers from Ethan's youth center in Rainier Valley, kids he had been teaching electrical safety to for 2 years, stood up from the groom's side of the church. They had talked among themselves, and they had prepared something. One of them, a 16-year-old named Marcus Jr., who everyone called MJ, walked to the front of the church with a folded piece of paper. He cleared his throat and looked at Ethan.
"Mr. Brooks said we could say something if we wanted to," MJ said to Father O'Brien, who nodded. MJ unfolded the paper. "We wrote this for him, because he shows up for us every week, and we wanted to show up for him today." He read from the paper in a voice that shook only a little. "Mr. Brooks taught us that the most important tool you own isn't in your toolbox. It's the choice you make to come back when things are hard. He comes back every Saturday, even when it rains, even when we're difficult. He always shows up." MJ folded the paper. "We hope you always show up for each other the way you show up for us." The church absolutely dissolved. Every guest who had been holding themselves together stopped trying. Father O'Brien himself reached for his handkerchief. Ethan was crying too hard to speak. Maya squeezed his hands and whispered, "Breathe." Then Father O'Brien lifted his voice above the sound of 200 people feeling something enormous together.
He said, "I've officiated over 300 weddings in this building. I have never seen a bride walk alone. I have never seen a mother appear from across 20 years of silence. I have never seen teenagers stand and deliver words that honest." He paused. "But I have also never been more certain that 2 people belong to each other. Nathan, Maya." He caught himself, smiled gently. "Ethan, Maya, you have already proven something that most people spend a lifetime trying to find. You can weather the worst of what the world puts in front of you. This ceremony is simply the official beginning of something that clearly already exists." He looked out at the congregation. Is there anyone present who wishes to object to this union? Silence. Every head turned instinctively toward the back row. Linda said nothing. She pressed her tissue harder to her mouth and shook her head, barely visible, the smallest gesture.
"Then by the power vested in me," Father O'Brien said, his Irish-American voice warm and certain, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan, you may kiss your bride." Ethan pulled Maya close and pressed his forehead against hers for just a moment before the kiss. "Thank you for not running," he whispered. "I was never going to run," she whispered back. They kissed to the sound of 200 people rising to their feet. The reception at Ironworkers Hall was everything it needed to be. Grand entrance, first dance, a buffet dinner that everyone agreed was exceptional. Derek's best man toast, which made half the room laugh and the other half cry, and somehow managed to do both at the same time. To Ethan, Derek said, glass raised, "The hardest working, most patient, most decent man I have ever had the privilege of knowing." And to Maya, brave enough to walk that aisle alone and smart enough to marry him anyway. May you always show up for each other the way you both showed up today.
Ethan barely ate. He sat at the head table picking at his plate and periodically staring at nothing, his mind clearly still back at that altar. Maya leaned against him and let him be wherever he was. At 7:40, he turned to her and said, "I have to go talk to her. I can't do this. I can't keep dancing and cutting cake while she's out there somewhere." Maya took his face in her hands. "Go," she said. "I'll be right here when you come back." Ethan walked the 3 blocks back to St. Michael's Cathedral alone. He found Linda and Paul sitting on the stone steps outside the main entrance. She stood when she saw him, quickly, like she wasn't sure if she should. He stopped a few feet away. "You're still here," he said. "You told me not to leave." A long silence. "I don't know what to say to you," Ethan said. "You don't have to say anything," Linda said. "You just have to decide if you want to listen or if you want to leave. Either way, I understand." He sat down on the steps. Not next to her, 4 feet away. He didn't look at her. Talk. Linda talked. She told him everything. The drinking, the boyfriends, the unraveling. The morning she buckled Ethan into a seatbelt and drove him to that bus station, knowing already what she was going to do. She told him about the gas station receipt she had written the note on, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen. She told him about going to her boyfriend's apartment after, about what she took, about waking up in a hospital 3 days later with Ruth's voice on the phone. Ruth, who had never screamed at anyone in her life, screaming at Linda until the phone shook. About the court-mandated rehabilitation program, about the first meeting, about the bronze coin, about the years of counseling and making amends and building a life that couldn't undo what she had done, but could at least stop adding to the damage. She told him about watching him from a distance for 6 years. "I know that's a violation," she said. "I know I had no right. I just needed to know you were okay." Ethan stared at the sidewalk. "August was September 4th, he said. "Gate 4, 11 in the morning. You gave me M&Ms. "Peanut," she said. "Your favorite." "I waited 37 minutes. She covered her face. "I know." "The man who found your note, his name was Barry." "Okay," she said, very quietly, the way you say okay when there is nothing else to say. "Grandma Ruth picked me up 2.5 hours later." "I know. I called her from the hospital. She didn't say much, just that you were with her now, and that I should not call again." Ethan looked up for the first time. "Did she file the restraining order before or after that?" "Before. 3 weeks after I left you." Silence, long and complicated. Paul sat very still on the far end of the steps, not looking at either of them, giving Ethan space. "I'm angry," Ethan said finally. "I'm going to be angry for a long time."
"You don't get to show up at my wedding and then have everything be okay." "I know," Linda said. "I didn't come because I thought it would fix anything. I came because I couldn't let you stand alone again." He looked at her. "I'm seeing a therapist. Her name is Dr. Sandra Moore. If I decide I want to do this, you will come to sessions with me. I will set the pace. If I need to slow down or stop, you will stop."
Whatever you need. And you never tell me what I should feel or how fast I should move through this. I promise. Ethan stood. The conversation was over. He started back toward the reception, then stopped without turning around. Joanna, he said. Linda looked up at the use of her first name. Linda, he corrected himself. When I was little, when you were clean, you'd make pancakes on Saturday mornings, blueberries, from scratch. He paused. I used to love those. Linda's face broke completely. I know you did, she managed.
Thank you for coming to the wedding, Ethan said. He walked away without looking back. Linda sat on those steps and cried until Paul put his arm around her and helped her to the car. Meanwhile, at 7:48 that evening, while Ethan and Linda were sitting on those cathedral steps, Ryan Mitchell, one of Ethan's union brothers who had been filming wedding videos since the ceremony, uploaded a 52-second clip to TikTok. The caption read, "Bride walked the whole aisle alone because her family boycotted the wedding." Then his mom, who abandoned him as a kid, showed up at the back of the church. He fell to his knees. I have never seen anything like this in my life. 2 minutes, 400 views. 5 minutes, 1,800 views. 10 minutes, 12,000 views.
By the time Ethan returned to the reception, by the time they cut the cake, by the time Maya's bouquet stayed in her hands because she announced she was keeping it, because that bouquet had walked alone with her and it was staying with her now. By the time the reception wound down at 11, Ryan's video had 600,000 views and was climbing fast. By midnight, it had passed 3 million. They found out the next morning. Maya and Ethan had driven to a small rental cabin on the Olympic Peninsula for a 4-day mini honeymoon. They had their phones on airplane mode from the moment the reception ended. They turned Wi-Fi on the next morning to check the tide schedule for the beach walk they had planned. The wave hit them immediately. Hundreds of missed texts, voicemails stacked, Instagram notifications in the thousands, multiple media inquiry emails forwarded from Priya's coordination account. Ryan's video had reached 18 million views and was still climbing.
6 other guests had posted their own angles. A wide shot from the back of the church showed the empty family seats on Maya's side in devastating clarity. A close-up of Ethan's face when Linda appeared at the door had been viewed separately 4 million times. A clip of MJ reading from his paper had gone independently viral on 3 platforms, with the caption, "A teenager stood up at a wedding to honor the man who shows up for him every Saturday. I'm not okay." The comments, "Her parents called him trash and refused to come. His mother, who actually knows what it means to fail him, drove up from Olympia to make it right. The irony is going to live in my brain forever." 800,000 likes. They judged this man for being abandoned as a child, as if an 8-year-old boy chose that. These parents are unbelievable. 400,000 likes. The bride is keeping her bouquet because it walked the aisle with her when no one else would. I will think about this forever. 600,000 likes. Someone had found the wedding hashtag and cross-referenced it with Maya's family's social media. Comments began appearing on Patricia's Facebook, on Brandon's LinkedIn, on Claire's Instagram. The comments were not kind. Your sister walked alone because you sided with your parents' classism. Own that. You boycotted a wedding because the groom's mother struggled with addiction. Then his mother came anyway because she wanted to do better. Compare yourselves. Ethan set his phone face down on the cabin table. What do we do? Maya stared at her screen. 37 media inquiries. Good Morning America, People magazine, a producer from a major podcast network. Nothing today, Ethan said. We're on our honeymoon. The world can wait. They tried. It was hard, but they tried. They walked on the beach.
They ate breakfast at a tiny place in Port Angeles called the Lakeview Diner, a name that was slightly misleading given the ocean view, and they drank good coffee and didn't look at their phones until the second day. On day 2, a voicemail from Patricia. Maya, honey, we saw the video. Everyone has seen the video. We need to talk. Please call us back. Maya played it once, then deleted it. Not today, she said. Not until I'm ready. A week after the wedding, settled back in their apartment in Seattle's Beacon Hill neighborhood, life began to take on a new and tentative shape. Ethan had texted Linda the day after they returned from the Olympic Peninsula. A simple message.
I got your number from Derek. I'm willing to try, but I need you to be patient. Her reply came within 4 minutes. Anything you need. Thank you. Their first coffee meeting was at a Tim Hortons in Kent, roughly equidistant between Seattle and Olympia. They met on a Thursday morning. Both arrived early.
Neither could eat. They ordered coffee and sat across from each other in a corner booth and had the kind of conversation that does not fix anything, but begins something. I have over 60 letters I wrote to you and never sent, Linda said. She pulled a folded envelope from her bag. This is the first one, from October 2020, the week after Ruth died. She held it out. Ethan looked at it for a moment, then took it and put it in his jacket pocket without reading it. I'll read it when I'm ready, he said. Okay, Linda said. At their second meeting 2 weeks later, Linda brought photographs. Ethan as a baby, Ethan at his first birthday, Ethan at his second, face covered in chocolate cake, laughing. Ethan in a Halloween costume, a tiny firefighter, age 3. Ethan on the first day of what must have been kindergarten, wearing a backpack that was nearly as big as he was. He had never seen any of these. He stared at them for a long time without speaking.
I don't remember any of this, he said. I know, Linda said. I stole that from you. You did, he said. Then, very quietly, thank you for showing me now. Can I keep them? Linda pressed her hands flat on the table. They were always yours. Maya had her own separate reckoning to manage. Patricia called 7 times over the 2 weeks following the wedding. Gerald called twice. Brandon sent 3 texts. Claire sent 5, each one a little more honest than the last, working towards something that was trying to be a real apology. Maya waited until she felt ready, which took 11 days. Then she called her mother back. The conversation was brief and non-negotiable. You want back into my life? Maya said, no preamble. Here is how that works. Family therapy. Me, you, Dad, and Ethan in the same room with a professional peasant. You go to individual therapy and you actually work on why you did this. You accept that my husband is part of my life, and you do not get opinions on my marriage anymore. You gave up that right when you sent back the invitation. That seems extreme, Patricia said. You boycotted my wedding because you decided my husband wasn't good enough for our family, and then 42 million people watched me walk down the aisle alone because of it. Silence. We'll be there, Gerald said from the background. He must have had it on speaker. His voice was quieter than Maya had ever heard it, less certain of itself. I'm sending you a therapist's name, Maya said. Dr. Sandra Moore. First session includes all 4 of us. If you don't show, this conversation is over. We'll be there, Patricia said. And they were. Gerald and Patricia Collins arrived 8 minutes early to Dr. Sandra Moore's office in Bellevue on May 16th. They sat in the waiting room without speaking. Ethan and Maya arrived on time. Patricia started to reach for Maya in the doorway. Maya stepped back slightly. Inside, she said, not unkindly, but firmly. Dr. Moore's office was calm and warm, chairs arranged in a circle, tissue box accessible from every seat. She laid out the rules without preamble. No defending, no qualifying. Listen before responding. Be honest. Patricia opened her mouth twice before the session was 10 minutes old and stopped herself both times, visibly working against instinct. When Maya described walking down the aisle, she kept her voice steady. When she described counting the steps to keep from crying, Patricia's composure broke. I didn't think about what it would look like, Patricia said. That was the problem, Dr. Moore said. You didn't think about what it would feel like to Maya. You thought about what it would feel like to you. Gerald looked at his hands. We've worked very hard to build stability, he said.
We grew up without much, and we spent our whole lives making sure our children had more. And when we saw Maya choosing someone we thought was... He stopped. Was what? Ethan asked. His voice was even. He had prepared for this conversation. Less than what she deserved, Gerald said. You mean less than what you imagined, Ethan said. Because you didn't ask. You didn't ask Maya how she felt. You didn't ask me about my life or my work or my plans. You decided, from a distance, based on my background, and then you acted as though your decision was the same as a fact. Gerald had no answer to that. The session ran 90 minutes. Dr. Moore assigned homework. Letters. Separate ones, from both Gerald and Patricia, addressed separately to Maya and to Ethan. Genuine accounting. No defense, no explanation. Just honesty about assumptions made and harm caused, and a specific articulation of what change would look like in practice. They agreed to return for a second session. They left separately from Maya and Ethan, and Maya watched her parents walk across the parking lot toward their car, her father's hand on her mother's back, and she felt something complicated move through her that was not forgiveness yet, but was not hatred either. It was something closer to possibility, which was, she decided, more than enough to work with for now. By the time their story reached 42 million combined views across every platform, Life magazine had published a full interview. The headline read, "She walked alone, he fell to his knees, and the woman who walked through that door changed everything." They chose to do the interview not because they wanted the attention, but because Dr. Moore pointed out that their silence was allowing other people to tell their story for them, and that was not acceptable. The interview ran 6 pages. A photo of Maya in her wedding dress, pearls at her throat, taken by James Park at the altar.
A photo of Ethan with the teenagers from the youth center, MJ in the center grinning. A photo of the empty reserved seats on the bride's side, stark and small and devastating. And a photo that Linda had asked permission to share, the only photo that existed of Ethan as a child that Linda had been able to give him. Age 5, blueberry pancakes on his face, laughing at something off camera. The caption beneath it read simply, "Saturday morning, before everything." Linda gave a separate interview to a podcast called When We Return, a series specifically about family reconciliation and recovery from addiction. She described the decision to attend the wedding, the drive to Seattle, the 22 minutes sitting in the parking lot of St. Michael's Cathedral, trying to make herself go inside. She described what it felt like to walk through that door and see Ethan at the altar, a grown man who had become someone extraordinary entirely without her. She did not minimize what she had done.
She did not ask for absolution. She said, "He deserved better than what I gave him. The best thing I can do now is make sure the years ahead look different from the years behind. That's all I get to do. That has to be enough." 6 months after the wedding, on a warm October evening, Maya and Ethan drove down to Olympia for dinner. They sat at a table in a small Italian restaurant called Pellegrino's near the waterfront with Linda and Paul. It was their 4th dinner together. The conversation was easier than the first. Still careful, still layered with things unsaid, but easier. Paul passed the bread. Linda asked about the youth center. Ethan told a story about MJ that made everyone at the table laugh. Maya watched Ethan across the table and thought about how he had looked the first time they had met in that gym, quiet and self-contained, careful with the space he occupied, as though he had spent years learning to take up as little room as possible. He was different now. Or maybe he had always been this, and the wedding and all of it had simply made it visible. Before they left, in the parking lot under a clear October sky, Paul offered to take a photo. Ethan and Maya and Linda, standing together, no one forcing smiles, just 3 people who had found their way to the same frame after a very long time of being in entirely different pictures. It was not a perfect photo. It was not a perfect story. It was the truth. And sometimes the truth, when you finally look at it directly, is the bravest and most difficult and most necessary thing in the world. My parents attended 4 more therapy sessions. Patricia's second letter to Ethan was better than her first. Gerald's letter to Maya made her cry, not because it erased anything, but because it was honest in a way she had not expected from him. They are not where we need them to be. They are trying. Whether trying is enough remains to be seen. Ethan reads the letters from Linda slowly, one at a time.
There are 63. He has read 27. He tells me sometimes what he finds in them, and sometimes he keeps it. Both are okay. He keeps the childhood photos in a frame on his desk in the home office we set up in the 2nd bedroom of our apartment. The one of him in the Halloween costume is his favorite. He looks at it sometimes when he doesn't know I'm watching. He looks at it the way you look at something you almost lost before you even understood you had it. And MJ, the teenager who stood up in St. Michael's Cathedral with his handwritten paper and his shaking voice, graduated from the Youth Center's advanced program in June. He started a trade school pre-apprenticeship in electrical in September. He asked Ethan to write his letter of recommendation. Ethan spent 3 evenings on it. He told me later it was the most important thing he had ever written.
If any part of this story has landed somewhere real for you, I want you to know that you are not alone in whatever it is you're carrying. Families are complicated, and love is complicated, and forgiveness is the hardest and most necessary work any of us will ever do. Leave a comment on Story Sentence right now and tell me your story. Hit the like button if this found you when you needed it. Subscribe so you are here for what comes next. Because every week on Story Sentence, we tell the stories that are almost too real to say out loud, and those are the only stories worth telling.